When learning about frameworks, there are a few core development concepts to understand, both when evaluating which framework to choose and in learning how to use a particular framework. Making these sorts of one-to-one comparisons can often be tricky, especially given how the documentation is organized within each of the different frameworks. But it's still really important if you're trying to determine which one you'd like to use. Fortunately, I've spent many hours putting together this material for you throughout the course, but the first step will be to understand the development concepts with which to look at these frameworks. The first concept to look at is pattern usage. All of these frameworks utilize the MVC pattern. The question is, how strictly and in what way do they enforce it, and what other patterns do they utilize? For example, CakePHP has a very strict naming and code organization enforcement, whereas CodeIgniter is much less dogmatic about how you place things, but it does still enforce MVC. What type of framework is it? Is it a glue framework or is it a full stack framework? A full stack framework comes with an entire set of constructs that you'll use, and you pretty much have to use everything or not use it at all. Whereas a glue framework allows you to break up and use different pieces of the framework. Zend is a good example of a glue framework. You can use the different library classes if you want to of Zend without actually using the MVC aspect of it. Another thing to look at is how code is organized. Namely, you're going to want to determine if it makes sense to you how everything is broken up. How is the data handled from within the framework? Does it use an object relational mapping tool like Doctrine? Can you persist through a tool like MongoDB? Or does it use fairly basic PHP or PHP's data tool called PDO? What types of component classes and helper classes are available from within the framework? Does it provide methodologies for performing authentication, for sending emails, for building forms and validating those forms? Does it provide the ability for caching? How modular is the framework? Can you use different parts of it? Or how difficult is it to integrate PHP that wasn't created from within the framework? Is there anything included in the framework that's going to help you with your user interface development? Some of the frameworks will include easy access to libraries like jQuery and Dojo, which have JavaScript and visual elements that will be easy to implement. Some of the frameworks will also provide you with tools to generate HTML5 forms that can be really helpful if you're trying to deliver to mobile and devices. The last thing to look at will be developer tools. Will you be able to use your existing development environment for this framework, or will you have to adapt another one? Does the framework itself provide tools for profiling your application and seeing how well it performs? Does it provide tools for easy debugging? And does it provide constructs for you to do testing? There's a number of concepts that you'll need to understand, both when comparing frameworks and when you begin to learn them. We've looked at some of these, including pattern usage, code organization, data handling mechanisms, available of helper classes, modularity, user interface helpers, and developer tools. Understanding how a framework incorporates these elements will help you to understand how it works.